They never tell you how fast time will slip through your fingers until it's gone. One day you're rocking your baby to sleep, humming lullabies into the soft spot on his crown. And the next, he's 6 feet tall, brewing his own coffee and fixing things around the house with that quiet confidence that never fails to undo me. My name is Claire. I'm 45, a teacher by profession and a mother by identity. Everything in me is etched with the story of my son, Adam. He's 23 now, calm, composed, thoughtful in ways most young men aren't. And lately there's been something else. It started as a silence. Not the kind that stretches between people who no longer know how to speak. No, this was a full silence, one that said everything too dangerous to voice aloud. It lingered in our kitchen during late-night tea. In the way he held eye contact just a few seconds too long. In the subtle but unmistakable shift of his voice when he said my name. Mom, he'd murmur, softer than he used to. As if the word itself carried weight. Maybe I'm imagining it. I've asked myself that more times than I can count. But I've always been the kind of woman who notices the tremble beneath the still water, the thunder before the storm. I notice him, always have. Adam came home after college. Just for a few months, he said. But that was last fall, and now spring is blooming through the windows of our quiet house. He brings me coffee in the morning sometimes, makes jokes about my taste in books, and insists on fixing whatever little thing I say is broken, from faucets to feelings. Last week, I twisted my ankle on the back steps. It wasn't serious, just one of those clumsy human moments that remind you you're not made of steel. Adam was home, and before I could even finish the sentence, he was there. Kneeling, gentle hands lifting my foot, eyes scanning for bruising. "Does it hurt when I touch here?" he asked, his voice steady. "No," I said. But my breath caught anyway. Because in that moment, something fluttered in the air between us, too delicate to name, too real to ignore. He helped me to the couch and brought me ice, sitting close, his thigh brushing mine. "You've got to be more careful," he said, but the words were too tender, too intimate. I felt his gaze on me, lingering, unblinking, and I, traitorously, let it stay. It's hard to explain the way the world shifts when someone who's always belonged to you suddenly feels like a stranger. Not in the way that implies distance, but in the way that hints at mystery. Something hidden. Something unspoken. I've never been one to confuse love with anything else. I know what maternal affection feels like. I also know what it feels like when something else begins to bloom, slowly and silently, in the shadows of the familiar. That night, I stood in the bathroom brushing my hair, watching my reflection blur with steam from the shower. Adam had gone out for a walk, and I found myself missing him in that strange, aching way that doesn't make sense when you've spent every day together for months. My fingers trembled slightly as I pinned my hair back. I didn't recognize the woman in the mirror. Not completely. She looked too aware of herself. Too aware of the memory of his hand on her ankle. The way his breath hitched when their eyes met for too long. This isn't how a mother should feel. And yet, later I found myself in the kitchen, sleepless. I don't know why I'd started baking at midnight, but there I was, elbow-deep in flour when Adam walked in, barefoot, hoodie half-zipped. He froze for a second, surprised. "Couldn't sleep." I shook my head. "Baking therapy." He smiled, rubbing his eyes. "I missed this," he said, moving closer, pulling a stool to sit across from me. The smell of cinnamon, the whole vibe. It feels safe." The word felt heavy in the air, like it meant more than comfort. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. We sat in silence for a while, the only sounds the faint hum of the fridge and the soft tapping of my spoon against the bowl. When he reached forward to swipe some batter with his finger, I smacked his hand gently. "You're still 5 years old sometimes." He laughed and then he didn't. His eyes met mine again, and something in his expression shifted. His smile faded, replaced by something quieter, more intense. "Sometimes," he said slowly, "I think you see me more clearly than anyone else ever has." My breath caught. "I do," I whispered, the words slipping out before I could think better of them. He didn't say anything after that. He just watched me like he was memorizing the lines of my face, and I let him. Because I didn't know how not to. The morning after our midnight baking session, I woke to sunlight stretched across my bedroom ceiling like a lazy ribbon. The scent of cinnamon still lingered in the air. I stayed in bed longer than usual, listening to the house breathe, the creak of wood, the faint stir of wind through the trees outside, and then footsteps. Adam. His presence had become a rhythm, quiet, steady, oddly comforting. He didn't knock anymore when he brought me coffee. He just opened the door a crack and murmur, "Morning," in that same voice that used to announce scraped knees or forgotten homework. Only now it was softer, slower, almost reverent. I found him at the kitchen table, already dressed, hair damp from a shower, mug in hand. The light from the window caught on the side of his jaw, sharper now than the boy I once carried on my hip. His features defined by time and growing things. "You made extra," I said, nodding to the steaming second mug. He smiled without looking up. "Figured you might want it strong this morning." I sat across from him, wrapping my fingers around the cup. "You figured right." We sat in silence, drinking. Not the heavy kind of silence, but the kind where nothing needs to be said because something already has been. He finally spoke. "You okay?" I nodded, then added, "Just a strange dream." That was a lie. There had been no dream, not really. Just a feeling, thick and bittersweet, that had clung to me all night, threading itself through every breath I took. The memory of his voice. The way he'd looked at me across that kitchen counter, like I was something fragile and sacred. Adam watched me carefully. "You're quiet this morning." "So are you," I said. He tilted his head, the corner of his mouth twitching into a small, almost shy smile. "Maybe I'm just thinking." I wanted to ask what he was thinking. I wanted to press, to dig beneath the calm surface of his face until I found what was stirring beneath. But I didn't. 'Cause I already knew. Instead, I reached for the plate of leftover cookies from the night before, crumbling one between my fingers. He watched the way my hands moved. I felt his gaze like the sun through a window pane. "You've got that look again," he said. "What look?" "That faraway one. Like you're here but not really." Shrugged. "Just thinking about how fast time moves." He nodded. "Yeah. Sometimes I wish I could pause it." There was a beat, a shift in the air. "I like it here," he said after a while. "I like being home." I didn't answer right away. The word home caught on something in me. Something soft and unsteady. "Sometimes I forget what it feels like," he added. "But then I come back and it's like everything inside me breathes easier." I looked up. Our eyes locked, and for a moment I forgot how to swallow. "What are we doing?" That thought echoed in my head, as loud and clear as a bell. But it wasn't frightening. It was grounding. Like I was finally admitting something I'd tried not to name. He stood, coffee cup in hand, and placed it in the sink. "Want to go for a drive?" he asked over his shoulder. "It's a good day for it." I hesitated but nodded. "Sure." We ended up at the lake. The one we used to visit when he was younger, where he'd skip rocks until the sun dipped low enough to paint everything gold. He parked the car and cut the engine. For a few seconds we just sat, both of us staring at the water. "I used to think this place was magic," Adam said, his voice low. "When I was a kid, I'd imagine there was a door under the lake that led somewhere else." "Where?" I asked. He smiled, a little crooked. "Anywhere. Just somewhere where nothing hurt." I reached for his hand without thinking. Just a gesture. Just something. His fingers curled around mine almost immediately, warm and solid. The quiet between us wasn't awkward. It wasn't even new. It was charged. "I know it sounds silly," he added. "It doesn't," I said. "We all want to escape sometimes." He turned to look at me. "Do you?" I didn't answer. 'Cause the truth was yes. Yes, I did. I wanted to escape the expectations, the shoulds and shouldn'ts, the tight little box the world keeps mothers in, where we're expected to give everything, to feel nothing, to disappear into the background when our children grow up. But Adam had never let me disappear. He squeezed my hand slightly. You know, sometimes I wish we could start over. Start over. Echoed. Not because anything was wrong. Just to live it all again. But slower. My chest ached. That's not how time works, sweetheart. He turned his head toward the window, the muscles in his jaw tight. I know. I feel like we missed something. Somewhere in the rush of it all. I wanted to say we didn't miss anything, but I didn't believe it. 'Cause something had changed. Slowly. Over time. In the late-night talks, the quiet meals, the unspoken understanding that grew roots and wrapped itself around us like ivy. And I didn't know what to call it. I didn't dare call it anything. But I felt it pulsing just beneath the surface. When we got home, he hovered near the kitchen while I made tea. He leaned against the counter, arms crossed, watching me. You always make it the same way, he said. Some habits don't change. He stepped closer. Some do. I looked up. He was too close now. And I didn't step back. Instead, I said softly, Adam, I'm still your mother. He didn't flinch. I know. And the way he said it, steady, sure, almost reverent, made my heart tremble. He reached past me for the sugar jar. His hand brushed my waist as he did. Light touch, barely there. But I felt it. Every nerve in me lit like a match. Then he was gone, settling into his usual seat at the table. As if nothing had happened. And maybe nothing had. Not really. But the stillness between us was full of things we hadn't said. Of truths too dangerous to speak. Yet somehow I knew we were already speaking them. In every glance. In every silence. In the way my hand shook just a little as I poured the tea. And in the way he noticed and said nothing. Because there are some things that don't need words. I'd always known the human heart had secrets. Deep rooms where longing lived quietly, shut behind bolted doors. I never imagined I'd lose the key inside my own chest. That night, the rain came, soft and steady, tapping at the windows like an echo of something unresolved. I sat in the living room, wrapped in a throw blanket, a book in my lap that I wasn't reading. The house was warm, but inside I felt chilled, not by cold, but by everything unspoken still hanging in the air. Adam came in from his room wearing a navy hoodie and old gray sweats, hair slightly mussed from his pillow. Can't sleep either, he asked. His voice low with that sleepy rasp that made him sound older than he was. I shook my head. Just restless. He dropped down beside me on the couch, closer than usual. Close enough that our knees brushed. He smelled like eucalyptus and soap. Familiar and clean and something heartbreakingly safe. I wanted to pull away. I didn't. I hate nights like this, he murmured, rubbing a hand over his face. Too quiet. Like the world's waiting for something. Maybe it is, I said softly, surprised at myself. His eyes found mine, slow and steady, as if waiting for me to take it back. I didn't. We sat like that for a long moment. No words, no movement, just breath and presence. The lamp beside us glowed amber. The rain fell. And the space between our bodies felt impossibly loud. He shifted slightly. Mom! Something in the way he said it broke me. It wasn't the word itself, it was the way he said it. A whisper wrapped in conflict, in hunger, in tenderness. And I knew, with terrifying clarity, that he was just as lost as I was. I reached out without thinking, brushing his hair back from his forehead, a gesture I'd done 100 times since he was a boy. But this time, his eyes fluttered closed like it meant something more, like it hurt. I don't know what's happening to me, he admitted, voice cracking. I've tried to stop it. I swear I have. My hand trembled where it rested against his temple. I know, I whispered. I don't want to make things harder for you. You haven't, I said. But you've made things different. He opened his eyes then and I saw it all. The fear, the guilt, the raw yearning he'd buried beneath years of polite distance. It lived in me too, blooming slowly, shamefully, against all the rules I'd followed my entire life. I don't want to ruin us, he said. You won't, I answered. We're already changed. That's not something you did alone. The confession sat between us like a held breath. Fragile, trembling truth. And then, slowly, his hand found mine. The warmth of it melted something inside me. My fingers curled around his without resistance. The moment stretched. He leaned forward just slightly. Just enough for me to feel the pull. And I should have stopped it. I should have said something. Anything. But instead I let the moment hold us. Let it carry us like a wave breaking against a quiet shore. And then he kissed me. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't forceful. It was slow, questioning, like a word spoken in a language neither of us had learned, but somehow understood. His lips brushed mine with trembling care. And oh God, I didn't pull away. I let it happen. The first second felt like falling. The second like forgetting. The third like coming home. He pulled back only slightly, his forehead resting against mine, both of us breathless. I couldn't open my eyes. I was afraid to see the truth on his face, afraid of the light that might fall on what we'd just done. But his hand stayed in mine, and his voice was barely audible when he whispered, "I'm sorry." "No," I said, my voice thin and shaking. "Don't be." "Not yet." We didn't speak for the rest of the night. We just sat there in the hush of the storm. His thumb moving gently across the back of my hand, my heart beating so loudly I was sure he could hear it. At some point, I laid my head on his shoulder. He didn't move. And when I finally closed my eyes, I realized the strangest thing of all. I didn't feel guilt. Not yet. Just quiet. Just the heavy, impossible knowing that something had shifted. Something that couldn't be undone. The morning after the kiss came like any other. Quiet, gray, with the smell of rain lingering in the trees. But the air in the house was different. Watching us. I stayed in bed longer than usual, half hoping Adam would be gone when I came out, half praying he wouldn't be. My hand drifted unconsciously to my lips, where his had been hours earlier. They still tingled, as if touched by something more than warmth, touched by truth. And truth, as I was quickly learning, didn't always feel safe. When I stepped into the kitchen, he was there, standing by the window, coffee mug in hand, barefoot in his gray sweats, staring into the pale morning like he was trying to read a message only he could see. He turned when he heard me, and for a breathless second we didn't speak. His eyes searched mine. I looked away. "Hey," he said softly. "Hey." I walked past him to the cabinet, pulled down my usual mug, and poured my coffee without a word. I hated how loud the sound of it was, how it filled the space like a warning bell. He stayed where he was. "I didn't sleep," he said quietly. "Me either." He nodded. "I wanted to check on you, but I didn't know if you'd want that." "I didn't know what I wanted," I admitted, wrapping both hands around my cup. "I still don't." We sat at the table like we always did. But everything felt different, like we'd stepped into a new version of our lives, where nothing fit quite the way it used to. "I keep thinking," he began, then stopped. "If I could take it back, I would." The words were careful, measured. Too careful. I nodded, keeping my gaze low. "I know. Me too." But even as I said it, something inside me whispered a different truth. I wasn't sure I would take it back. Not entirely. Because that moment on the couch wasn't about crossing lines. It wasn't about right or wrong. It was about something else. Something honest. Something human. "I didn't mean to hurt you," Adam said. "You didn't," I replied. He hesitated. "Then what was it?" I looked up at him, really looked. And for the first time I saw not just the boy I'd raised or the man he'd become, but something in between. A flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. Plea for understanding. "It was real," I said. "And terrifying." He let out a breath, nodding slowly. "Yeah." For a while, neither of us said anything. The world outside moved on. The trees stirred. A delivery truck rumbled down the street. But inside the house, everything remained suspended, like we were waiting for someone to break the spell. "I think," he said at last, "we were both just looking for something." His voice was calm, but beneath it was a current. Grief. Loneliness. Hunger not for anything physical but for connection. For closeness. For being seen. I think you're right, I said. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, head in his hands. I don't want this to ruin us. I don't want to be the reason you stop trusting me. You're not, I said firmly. Don't ever believe that. His eyes lifted. Then what happens now? I swallowed. We move forward. Carefully. Honestly. Even if it means forgetting what happened. I looked at him, and the silence that followed said everything. I won't forget, I admitted. But I'll carry it quietly. He nodded. Me too. He reached for my hand again, the same way he had the night before. But this time I didn't let him take it. I offered a soft smile instead, something sad but grateful. I need space, I whispered. He pulled his hand back, slow and understanding. Okay. And that was it. No drama. No declarations. Just two people sitting in the stillness of what couldn't be. Not because it wasn't real, but because it wasn't meant to last. That evening he went to stay with a friend for a few days. Said he needed time to think. I told him I understood. I did. I spent those days cleaning out the garage, going through old boxes, listening to music that reminded me of the years when Adam still fit in the crook of my arm. Cried sometimes. Other times I laughed out loud at old photos, at memories of first steps and broken bicycles and birthday cakes made from scratch. The ache softened slowly, like a bruise fading. By the time Adam came home, we didn't need to talk about it anymore. The air had cleared. The unspoken things had settled into the walls. Not gone, just quieter. We made dinner together that night. Simple pasta. The way we used to. As we stood side by side at the sink, drying dishes in quiet rhythm. He bumped his shoulder against mine. Gently, playfully. Smiled. What was that for? A shrug. Just making sure you're still you. I am, I said. Mostly. He met my gaze again. The warmth was still there. The tenderness. But this time it stayed inside its lines. So we went on. Carefully. Honestly. With love that remained. Deep and strange and impossibly strong, but changed. Evolved. Not forgotten. Just transformed. Because sometimes the people we love most exist in the gray. In the spaces between what we want and what the world expects. And in those spaces we find not answers but grace.